What's going on, guys? I'm here today because apparently the United States is on the brink of civil war. Now, I don't really believe that, but if you look around the internet, certain irresponsible individuals in different areas of media and mass communications, this narrative is being pushed by a lot of people, and after seeing it a few times with people that I know and hearing things and you know, seeing it in my Facebook feed and in other places around the web, I feel like it's something that I need to discuss. Because first of all, it's not realistic. It's not something that I think is going to happen. At the most, people will hear this, put themselves in a compromising position, and unfortunately, it could end up getting somebody in a pretty big predicament and possibly even getting themselves killed. So I want to talk about that before anybody gets to that point. So, what are my thoughts? In my opinion, the thought of Americans fighting against Americans, it's just ignorant. But to the point of calling it a war, a civil war, which pits a large group of Americans against another large group of Americans, it takes it beyond ignorance. It's irresponsible, and to be totally honest, anybody that pushes this or says it out loud outside of their inner circles, it's unacceptable. Now, in order to understand where I'm coming from, I want you to recognize the difference between a civil war and a revolt. Now, this country, the United States, came as a result of what essentially was a revolt. People revolt against oppression. People revolt against tyranny. People revolt against unfair treatment and not having their voices heard. Revolts do happen from time to time. In fact, revolts are going on as we speak at different places of the world right now. But Civil War is a totally different animal. Civil War requires people living in a country, province, state, whatever it is, depending on what your location is and what those areas are named. It requires people that belong to the same faction bumping heads and going to war with each other. Now, we've already had a civil war here in the United States, and that really didn't end well. I won't get into the things that the Civil War was about, but we all know the outcome. But people felt like their way of life was in jeopardy. Many people's lives and livelihoods were on the line in the country's first Civil War, which I say first, it's going to be the only one, because this ridiculous idea is never even going to happen. But let's keep moving forward. The first Civil War was brutal. Many Americans died, and to be totally honest, there was a whole lot that could have been resolved prior to getting to where they got. But when you have stubbornness and different ideologies clashing, if nobody's willing to compromise and come to the table, you end up with something bigger than it has to be. But we live in a different time now. What happened back then is not going to happen today. I think the free flow of information and everybody being plugged into the same news sources and the same ideas and opinions is why things have gotten to the point where people would think that this ridiculous idea is something that's even feasible, possible, or that it actually could happen right now in 2017 with the way governments are structured, laws are structured, and everything else that's in place that keeps us from getting to this point. But let me go ahead and humor the people that really think this is something that could happen. This is how things would go for the people that are, for lack of a better term, silly enough to think that a civil war in the United States is possible. So how does it start? You have a relatively small group of people that feel like they have some reason or some cause to fight for. So who is this group of people fighting against? If by chance they have someone that's willing to take up arms and go against them, and you have a clash and you have a small a gunfight. Now, anytime you have a gunfight, the police show up. Now, in order for this thing to be an all-out war, the police are going to have to be discarded. So in order for someone to discard the police and the police's orders, now what you have is a fugitive terrorist organization fighting against somebody else that has to decide if they want to become a fugitive terrorist organization as well, and not just people that are in a fight convicted of manslaughter or possibly even murder. So now it becomes bigger than a gunfight because people have decided that they want to take up arms against their fellow Americans and become a terrorist organization. What now? Now what happens is the National Guard, the military gets mobilized. And these guys with your handguns, rifles, and maybe even some other weapons that you have stockpiled are against military level artillery. You got the tanks rolling in through your neighborhoods, and the 10, 15, 20, maybe even 50, 100 people that you talked into deciding to do something this silly, now they're all in the crosshairs, and they're going to be fair game whenever that happens. But I'll humor the Civil War people and say that even this doesn't stop them. In order for that to happen, your numbers have to have grown to within the thousands. So you have thousands of people now that are willing to give up their livelihoods, their lives, their families, and anything else that they hold dear. But for what? What are they fighting for? What's the cause? What's the end game? Coming out of this war, what will you have gained that you so desperately want that you are willing to kill, become a terrorist, a criminal, possibly even considered to be a murderer? What are you doing it for? You see how this sounds whenever it's coming from somebody else's mouth? It's ridiculous. That's pretty much all I got to say about this, but it's something that bothered me, and it's just not realistic. It's not going to happen. And if this is something that worries you, I urge you to stop listening to people that are saying this. And if you've ever said this, or this is something that's on your mind, just stop. If you genuinely believe it, after me explaining to you how that possibly could go, and you still are sticking to it, how can anybody take you seriously? It's a terrible idea. It's something that's just not going to work. And if you are one of the people that feel like you would be the one to kick something like this off, trust me, the instant the bullets start flying and people realize, man, this is for real, and there's nothing for you to fight for. There's no end game. There's no goal for you to achieve. You're going to be alone, afraid, and quite possibly you're going to get yourself killed or locked up for the rest of your life. It's not worth it. You cannot legitimately call yourself a patriot, a person that wants a better world, or even a revolutionary if you have no plan for positive change. I encourage you to talk to iron out your differences. Learn more about those that you might disagree with if they're willing to meet you halfway. Because let's be honest, the only thing that's happening anyways is talking. The talks might as well be productive. If you gained anything from what you heard here, do me a favor and give this video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, subscribe by clicking my picture. That one right there. This is Facts and Opinions with Don. I'm Donald January Jr. Until next time, peace.